2 minutes left. God is giving you a powerful hint about your soulmate. My beloved child, listen carefully, don't skip this message. You may have only a few moments before you scroll away, but perhaps the reason you stopped here is because something inside you needed to hear these words. There is a hint about your love life that you may have overlooked. Not because it was hidden from you, but because you were looking for something obvious when the answer may have been quietly appearing in front of you all along. Stay until the end, because the final realization may completely change the way you look at the person you have been thinking about. This is not about fear, and it is not about forcing a prediction. It is about paying attention to the emotions, patterns, and choices that may already be telling you something important. Think about the person who immediately entered your mind when you heard the word soulmate. Don't dismiss that reaction. You don't have to assume it proves anything supernatural, but it can reveal something about your own heart. Maybe there is a reason this person still occupies a corner of your thoughts. Maybe there are unfinished conversations. Maybe there are memories you never completely processed. Maybe there is something you wish you could say if you knew they would listen without judgment. And perhaps the hint you're looking for begins with that simple question: why does this person still matter to me? Listen carefully, because the first hint may not be a message from outside you. It may be the sudden realization of what you truly want from love. For a long time, you may have focused on whether someone would return, whether they were thinking about you, whether they secretly missed you, or whether the timing would finally become right. But what if the deeper message is about you? What if you are being reminded that love should not leave you constantly guessing? What if your soulmate isn't simply someone who creates intense emotions, but someone who creates emotional safety, honesty, and peace? That thought can change everything. Maybe you've experienced a connection that felt unusually powerful. You could talk for hours, or perhaps you barely needed words at all. There may have been a strange sense of familiarity, as though you had known each other longer than you actually had. Maybe you noticed small coincidences that made you wonder whether there was something deeper happening. But here's the important part: meaningful connections are not proven by coincidences alone. The real evidence is how two people treat each other. If someone respects you, communicates honestly, takes responsibility, and consistently makes room for you in their life, those are the signs worth paying attention to. And perhaps that is the powerful hint you've been waiting for. Not a number. Not a random coincidence. Not a mysterious prediction. Consistency. Because anyone can appear during an emotional moment. Anyone can say, "I miss you." Anyone can promise that things will be different. But the person who truly wants a future with you will eventually demonstrate it through behavior. They won't make you spend every night decoding silence. They won't constantly disappear and return whenever they feel lonely. They won't expect you to carry the entire relationship. They will meet you halfway. Maybe your soulmate is learning that lesson too. Perhaps they have been thinking about what they did wrong. Maybe they remember moments when you needed reassurance and they gave you distance. Maybe they remember times when you reached out and they didn't know how to respond. Maybe they believed that keeping their emotions hidden would protect them. Instead, it created confusion. And now, with time passing, they may be realizing that avoiding vulnerability did not make their feelings disappear. It only made them louder inside. Maybe late at night, when everything becomes quiet, they remember you differently. During the day, they can distract themselves. They can work. They can talk to people. They can stay busy. But at night, when there is nothing left to distract them, memories can return. A song can remind them of you. A familiar place can bring back a conversation. A simple phrase can suddenly make them remember the way you used to speak. And for a few seconds, the distance between you may feel much smaller. But then fear returns. What if they have moved on? What if they don't want to hear from me? What if I waited too long? What if I ruined something that could have been beautiful? Those questions can keep someone trapped. And perhaps this is where your paths are changing, not necessarily because fate is forcing anything, but because both people may be reaching a point where pretending becomes harder than being honest. Maybe you have reached your own turning point. Perhaps you stopped chasing. Perhaps you stopped checking. Perhaps you stopped trying to interpret every little sign. Perhaps you finally told yourself, if they want to be in my life, they know where to find me. That decision may have been painful, but it may also have been necessary. Because sometimes your absence gives someone the space to understand your presence. When you were always available, they may never have realized how much emotional comfort they received from you. When you stopped explaining yourself, they may have finally heard the silence. When you stopped trying to hold everything together, they may have noticed how much effort you had been giving. And now they have a choice. Do they step forward? Or do they remain where they are? That choice belongs to them. Your job is not to force it. Your job is to observe. Stay till the end, because there is another hint you need to recognize. Sometimes the biggest clue that a connection is becoming healthier is not increased intensity. It is decreased anxiety. You may notice that you don't feel the same desperate need to know what happens next. You may still care deeply, but you're no longer willing to destroy your peace for an answer. You're beginning to understand that whatever is meant for you will have to meet you with mutual effort. That is growth. And growth can change relationships. Maybe your soulmate is growing too. Perhaps they are realizing that love isn't about possession. It isn't about control. It isn't about making someone jealous just to see whether they care. It isn't about disappearing to test someone's feelings. Love is communication. Love is accountability. Love is showing up. Love is making difficult conversations safer instead of avoiding them. Maybe they are beginning to understand that. And perhaps one day, you will receive a message from them that feels different from the messages of the past. Not a vague, "Hey." Not a random reaction. Not something sent at midnight because they're lonely. Something intentional. Something honest. Something that says, I have been thinking about what happened between us, and I want to talk. If that happens, don't rush. Read it. Breathe. Think. You don't have to answer immediately. Because the powerful hint isn't simply that someone reaches out. The powerful hint is why they reach out and what they do afterward. If they want another chance, let them explain what has changed. If they want forgiveness, let them take responsibility. If they want a future, let them show consistency. That's how you protect your heart without closing it. And maybe you're wondering, what if this person isn't my soulmate? Then let that question exist. You don't need to force an answer. Sometimes a person enters our life because they are meant to stay. Sometimes they enter because they are meant to teach. Sometimes they awaken something inside us that prepares us for a healthier love later. The meaning of a connection isn't always determined by whether it lasts forever. Sometimes the connection changes you forever even if the relationship doesn't. And perhaps that's the hint God is giving you today. Stop asking only, "Who is my soulmate?" Start asking, "What kind of love am I ready to receive?" That question is powerful. Because when you know what healthy love looks like, you stop mistaking confusion for passion. You stop mistaking anxiety for chemistry. You stop mistaking inconsistency for mystery. You stop believing that suffering is proof of love. You start looking for peace. You start looking for emotional maturity. You start looking for someone who doesn't need to lose you before appreciating you. And maybe that is exactly what is happening now. Maybe the person you've been thinking about is beginning to understand your value. Maybe they are recognizing that your presence was never ordinary. Maybe they are comparing the emotional connection they had with you to what they experience elsewhere and realizing there was something different. But again, don't let that become your reason to wait. Let it simply be information. Your life continues. Your purpose continues. Your healing continues. And if they want to catch up to you, they must walk. You don't need to turn around and run backward. That is the difference between chasing and allowing. Maybe the 2 minutes mentioned in this message are symbolic of something even deeper, a reminder that moments pass quickly. People wait years to say what they feel. They postpone apologies. They postpone forgiveness. They postpone happiness. They tell themselves they will have time later. But later is never guaranteed. So if there is someone you genuinely need to speak to, speak respectfully. If you owe someone an apology, consider giving one. If you need closure, seek it in a healthy way. If someone has hurt you repeatedly, give yourself permission to step away. And if someone truly matters to you, don't let pride become the only reason you remain silent. The hint isn't necessarily about getting someone. It's about becoming honest with yourself. Maybe you have been pretending you don't care because caring makes you vulnerable. Maybe you've been saying, "I don't need anyone," when what you really mean is, "I don't want to be hurt again." There is a difference. You can be independent and still desire love. You can protect yourself and still remain open. You can have boundaries without building walls. And perhaps your soulmate will understand that someday. Maybe they are learning how to approach you without disturbing your peace. Maybe they know that the old version of the relationship cannot continue. Maybe they realize that if they return, they need to return differently. That is the kind of change worth waiting for. Not a dramatic promise. A consistent pattern. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the person who once made you anxious now makes you feel safe. Imagine not needing to wonder where you stand. Imagine being able to ask a question and receive an honest answer. Imagine being able to disagree without fearing abandonment. Imagine being loved without having to earn it every day. That is the kind of love this message should point you toward. Whether it comes from the person you're thinking about or someone you haven't met yet. Maybe God isn't saying, this exact person is guaranteed. Maybe the message is, prepare your heart for love that is worthy of you. And that changes everything. Because you stop trying to force a specific outcome. You start trusting that what is right will reveal itself. You stop obsessing over timing. You start preparing for healthy connection. You stop asking for signs every hour. You start becoming the kind of person who can recognize the right relationship when it arrives. And perhaps that's why you found this message. Not because you're being given a countdown. But because you are being reminded that your next chapter doesn't have to repeat your last one. Your soulmate connection, if it is meant to develop, should become clearer, not more confusing. It should become healthier, not more painful. It should become more mutual, not more one-sided. And if the person you're thinking about begins moving toward that kind of relationship, you'll know. You won't have to force the evidence. You won't have to decode every silence. Their actions will speak. Maybe the first sign will be a sincere conversation. Maybe the next will be consistency. Maybe the next will be accountability. Maybe the final sign will be peace. Not fireworks. Not chaos. Peace. And when you experience that peace, you may realize something beautiful. You weren't asking for too much. You were simply asking the wrong person, or asking the right person at the wrong stage of their growth. Either way, you don't have to blame yourself. You loved with the understanding you had at the time. Now you know more. Now you're wiser. Now you recognize what you need. And that knowledge is priceless. So if someone from your past returns, don't immediately ask, is this destiny? Ask, is this healthy? If the answer is yes, take your time. If the answer is no, protect yourself. If you're uncertain, wait for more information. You don't have to decide everything today. Love doesn't become more real because you rush it. The right connection can survive patience. The right person can respect your boundaries. The right relationship can handle honest questions. And perhaps that is the final hint. You will not have to lose yourself to receive the love that is meant for you. Read that again. You will not have to become smaller. You will not have to beg. You will not have to compete. You will not have to pretend. You will not have to constantly prove that you are worthy. The right love will recognize your worth and build with it. So as these 2 minutes come to an end, don't panic. You are not running out of time. You are not too late. You are not forgotten. And you don't have to force tomorrow to arrive tonight. Let life unfold. Let people reveal themselves. Let actions become evidence. Let your heart heal. And if someone is truly meant to walk beside you, let them meet you while you are standing in your own strength. Maybe they are already thinking about you. Maybe they are realizing something. Maybe they are preparing to speak. But don't spend your life staring at the door. Live your life. And if the door opens, you'll be ready. When the message arrives, you'll be calm. When the conversation happens, you'll be wise. When love appears, you'll be strong enough to receive it without losing yourself. And maybe someday you'll look back at this exact moment and realize that the greatest hint wasn't about another person at all. It was about you. You were becoming ready. Ready to stop chasing. Ready to stop settling. Ready to stop confusing intensity with intimacy. Ready to choose peace. Ready to recognize real love. And perhaps that is the miracle you've been waiting for. Not someone coming to complete you, but someone meeting you while you are already whole. So take one final breath. Release the fear. Release the need to know everything right now. If your soulmate is meant to reach you, let them find you living, not waiting. Let them find you growing, not begging. Let them find you smiling, not broken. And when the right person finally stands before you, may you recognize them not because they create the most chaos, but because they create the deepest peace. That is the hint. That is the lesson. That is the beginning. And perhaps the most beautiful part is still ahead. You don't need to chase your future. You only need to become ready for it. So keep going. Keep healing. Keep believing in love without abandoning wisdom. And when the next chapter arrives, don't ask whether you were lucky enough to find your soulmate. Ask whether the love in front of you is healthy enough to stay. Because the right love won't just make your heart beat faster. It will finally teach your heart how to rest. And that is where this message ends. Not with a countdown, but with a promise to yourself. Whatever comes next, I will not lose myself trying to be loved. I will walk toward love only when love is willing to walk toward me. And perhaps, my beloved child, that is the powerful hint you were waiting for all along. My beloved child, listen carefully, this is the final moment of the message, and perhaps the most important realization is not about what your soulmate is doing, but about what is changing inside you. You may have come here looking for a sign, a name, a date, or some mysterious confirmation that someone is thinking about you. But sometimes the most powerful hint doesn't arrive as a notification on your phone. Sometimes it arrives as peace after a long season of confusion. Sometimes it arrives as the sudden strength to stop chasing what refuses to meet you halfway. And sometimes it arrives as the quiet realization that you deserve a love that doesn't make you constantly wonder where you stand. Maybe the person you've been thinking about is thinking about you too. Maybe they're remembering conversations, replaying moments, or wondering whether they should finally reach out. Maybe they have realized something about you that they didn't understand before. But if that realization is genuine, it will eventually become action. They won't simply miss you in silence forever. They will find a respectful way to communicate. They will take responsibility for what happened. They will show you through consistency that their feelings have matured. And when that moment comes, don't rush toward it simply because your heart has been waiting. Stop. Breathe. Listen. Ask yourself whether the person standing in front of you is bringing the same patterns that once broke your peace or whether they have genuinely grown. Because a second chance should never be a return to the same pain. It should be an opportunity to create something healthier than what existed before. Maybe they say, "I never stopped caring." Let them explain. Maybe they say, "I was afraid." Listen. Maybe they say, "I want another chance." Ask what has changed. You don't have to reject them, and you don't have to accept them immediately. You can allow time to reveal whether their words have roots. Real change doesn't need to be announced every 5 minutes. It becomes visible naturally. This is where the countdown ends, but your story doesn't. The 2 minutes were never about a magical deadline. They were a reminder that life moves quickly and that you shouldn't spend your precious time trapped inside uncertainty. Don't postpone your happiness until someone makes a decision. Don't postpone your dreams until someone returns. Don't postpone your healing until someone apologizes. Your life is happening now. If your soulmate is meant to return, let them return to a person who has continued growing. Let them find you stronger, wiser, calmer, and more confident. Let them see that you didn't spend every day waiting beside the door. You kept walking. And if they truly want to walk beside you, they can catch up. Maybe the greatest hint is that you no longer feel desperate for an answer. You can care deeply and still remain peaceful. You can love someone and still choose yourself. You can hope for a reunion without making your entire identity depend on it. That is not giving up on love. That is learning how to love without abandoning yourself. And perhaps tonight, somewhere, the person you're thinking about is facing the same truth. Maybe they're realizing that losing your presence wasn't as easy as they expected. Maybe they're beginning to understand the value of the conversations, patience, kindness, and emotional safety you once gave them. Maybe they are finally asking themselves whether fear was worth the distance. But whatever answer they discover, let it be theirs. You don't have to convince them. You don't have to chase them. You don't have to compete with anyone. You don't have to prove that you are worthy. The person who belongs in your future will eventually understand that your heart is not a prize to be won through games. It is a gift to be respected. And if they return, let them return with clarity. If they speak, let them speak honestly. If they apologize, let them take responsibility. If they promise, let their actions confirm it. If they want a future, let them build toward it. And if they cannot do those things, don't interpret their inability as a reflection of your worth. Sometimes a person can have feelings for you and still not be capable of giving you the relationship you deserve. That truth may hurt, but it can also set you free. Because your soulmate is not simply the person who creates the strongest emotional reaction. Your soulmate, if you believe in that kind of connection, should also be someone capable of meeting you with maturity, respect, honesty, and consistency. Intensity may catch your attention. Peace earns your trust. And trust is where something lasting begins. So don't be afraid if the answer doesn't arrive tonight. Don't be afraid if the message doesn't come tomorrow. Don't be afraid if the person you've been thinking about takes longer than you hoped. You are not running out of time. Your future isn't disappearing. Your opportunity for love isn't expiring. There is no 2-minute deadline on your worth. There is no countdown on your ability to be loved. There is simply your life. And you are still living it. Maybe the person you love will become part of the next chapter. Maybe someone unexpected will. Maybe the next chapter will begin with you choosing yourself more deeply than ever before. Whatever happens, let it be honest. Let it be healthy. Let it be real. And if someone comes into your life who makes you feel like you have to constantly prove yourself, remember this message. You don't have to beg for a place in a heart that truly wants you there. You don't have to compete with someone else. You don't have to chase someone who keeps running. You don't have to decode silence. The right relationship will not require you to become a detective. It will give you clarity. And perhaps one day, the person you have been waiting for will finally look into your eyes and say, "I understand now." Maybe they will tell you why they pulled away. Maybe they'll admit they were scared. Maybe they'll confess that they missed you. Maybe they'll say they wish they had handled things differently. And if that day comes, you may feel your old emotions rise again. But this time, you will not be the same person. You'll know the difference between hearing an apology and seeing change. You'll know the difference between longing and commitment. You'll know the difference between chemistry and compatibility. You'll know the difference between someone wanting you and someone being ready to love you. That wisdom will protect your heart. And perhaps it will also allow you to love more freely. Because you won't be afraid of losing someone who isn't willing to meet you honestly. You will understand that the right person doesn't need to be chased into staying. They choose to stay. They choose to communicate. They choose to grow. They choose to repair. They choose to build. And perhaps that is the real miracle. Not that someone magically appears. Not that a mysterious sign guarantees a specific person. But that you become capable of recognizing a healthy love when it arrives. So as this message ends, close your eyes for a moment. Think about the person who came to your mind when you first heard this message. Then release them from your expectations. Wish them clarity. Wish them healing. Wish yourself peace. And say quietly, "If this connection is meant for me, let it return with truth. If it is not, let me have the courage to release it. Either way, lead me toward the love that is right for me." Then breathe. That is enough. You don't need another sign tonight. You don't need to refresh your phone. You don't need to search for another prediction. You don't need to spend another hour wondering what someone else is thinking. Go live. Go smile. Go dream. Go become. Because if love is coming, let it find you living a life worth sharing. And if your soulmate truly is approaching, let them meet the version of you who no longer waits in fear. Let them meet someone who knows their worth. Someone who can love deeply without losing themselves. Someone who understands that love is not possession. Someone who knows that the strongest connection is not the one that creates the most anxiety, but the one that creates the deepest sense of safety. Maybe tomorrow brings a message. Maybe next week brings a conversation. Maybe months from now, you meet someone who changes everything. You don't have to know. You only have to trust that your life is still moving. And perhaps, years from now, you'll look back at this exact moment and smile because you finally understand why you couldn't have the answer sooner. You were not being denied. You were being prepared. Prepared to recognize something real. Prepared to stop accepting confusion. Prepared to love with boundaries. Prepared to choose peace. Prepared to understand that your worth was never dependent on whether one particular person chose you. And when that realization settles into your heart, something beautiful happens. The waiting loses its power. The fear loses its voice. The uncertainty loses its control. You become free. And from that freedom, love becomes different. You no longer chase. You attract through authenticity. You no longer beg. You communicate. You no longer settle. You choose. You no longer fear losing someone. You trust that the people meant to remain will make an effort to remain. That is your real transformation. So, my beloved child, don't count down the minutes. Count the lessons. Count the ways you've grown. Count the times you survived what you thought would break you. Count the moments you chose yourself even when it hurt. Count the courage it took to keep your heart open. And remember, you are not too late. You are not forgotten. You are not unworthy. You are not running out of time. Your story is still unfolding. And maybe the next chapter will bring your soulmate. Maybe it will